advantage of the opportunity. But right now is about right now.
The Plan B, Ohio State Buckeyes!
Give everything you got in your heart to this place.
Hello and welcome back to Rushing the Field, presented by Xfinity. He's Joshua Perry, I'm Nicole Auerbach, and wow, that was a wild week 8 of college football. Indiana, the story of the season again?
It feels like every week we come up here and we're like, oh my gosh, something insane happened.
Yeah.
And recently there haven't been a ton of seasons that were like that. Last year felt like chaos was brewing, and this year we're full chaos mode. I have wonderful things to say about Indiana. I have equally awful things to say about Penn State. There's a lot to get into.
Right. So, when you say this season feels crazy, we thought Penn State was running it back. Everybody came back, just got to win a couple of the big games, close the gap. You go out, get the highest paid, defensive coordinator in the country. Everything's going to be fine. They're going to follow what Ohio State did. They're going to follow what Michigan did. And instead, we're going to have a conversation about James Franklin and his job status. Drew Aller, probably the last time we saw him in a Penn State uniform. We'll get to all of that. Let's start on a positive note. Let's start about the Indiana Hoosiers. So it is their biggest win on the road ever. Mm-hmm. I think it's the biggest win in program history ever. I'm not in the weeds on Indiana, but this was the losingest program in the history of the sport. And they went out and beat Oregon at Autzen Stadium.
Right.
And beat them with an incredible front seven with a great quarterback.
Yes.
They beat them soundly.
That's the story for me, is going into that environment, which is notoriously difficult to play. And a lot of teams go in there and lose. And then to beat them the way that they did, you start to really look through the stats of the game to see if they match exactly what you thought you saw. And they do. This was an Oregon team that ran it for 2.7 a carry, which you expect them to be more explosive. Dante Moore was only sacked one time coming into this game. He was sacked, I believe, 6 times in this game against Indiana, right? So the front seven for Indiana was the part that dominated. It didn't allow Oregon to get into their explosive passing concepts. They couldn't establish a run game. It just felt like everything was difficult offensively. But then you flip it over to the Indiana offense part, and certainly highs, certainly lows. The interception from Mendoza was one of those moments that felt like it could have been a turning point. They just kept coming. Right? That's the thing, is they have that resolve that really good teams have.
They had a couple things that were unusual. Pre-snap penalties. Mm-hmm. You mentioned the pick. Fernando Mendoza did this against Iowa, too. He had a bad pick. And then has this, insanely perfectly placed ball later in the game to make up for it, to score the eventual game-winning touchdown. He has been a difference maker. Mm-hmm. And we've been saying it all season. That is an upgrade at the quarterback position. No offense to Curtis Rourke. But you're seeing little differences about last year's Indiana team, which was very good and couldn't quite compete with the big boys, to a team that is better than teams that are more talented than it is.
It's an interesting thing, I think, from a mentality standpoint. Last year was a banner year in terms of winning for Indiana, but you still walk into a place like the Horseshoe and you ask the question, can I do it? You still walk into South Bend, Notre Dame Stadium, and say, can we do it? And I think they built confidence through that, saying a lot of these same guys are back. We feel better about our quarterback position. Our guys are more experienced in this system. And now going into a place like Autzen, it's our turn to call the score. And I think part of that is Cignetti being a crazy person. But I do think that's a natural progression of how people learn how to win. You build the confidence through the experience. I think they walked in there today saying that they're the best team in America, which they very well may be.
Yeah, I don't know how many number 1 votes they'll get, but they could certainly make the case with a win of this caliber over Oregon on the road.
Who's got a better win?
Right. We've been saying for a couple weeks. Last week I voted Miami number 1 based on the sum of the resume. But yeah, I'm with you.
They've got the best win. They beat Illinois better than Ohio State did.
Yep.
Who's to say they're not number 1?
It's a good question. Anything you got on Oregon?
Yeah, I think this is a big moment in terms of a bounce back, and I trust Dan Lanning in that situation. This one feels worse than some of the other losses, and he's had worse losses. The Rose Bowl was a worse loss. That first big game they played against Georgia, definitely a worse loss. But this is Indiana coming into Autzen, so it has a different feel to it. His quarterback didn't play well. His offensive line got dominated. His defense was good and bad in certain moments. he's going to have to show that leadership that we all know that he has to get his team back on track, because he's certainly not out of it. They've got a lot of football to play.
They have too many talented players to not be explosive offensively, and that's going to be a problem, and it's something that needs a solution moving forward. Let's flip over to the Red River rivalry game. I always have to say that slowly. It's a lot of ours. This was a really interesting one. All week, everyone's tracking, was Jean Mateer going to play? He did. He had the little brace around his thumb on his throwing hand. But he also threw a bunch of interceptions, 3, I believe, on the day. And then Arch Manning played pretty much mistake-free football. There was a run game that helped him out. He had some nice throws. And Texas wins this game in pretty emphatic fashion at the end. The way that they were able to pull away in the second half was, I think, really impressive and really encouraging for Arch Manning, who I think he waved. Did he wave at the Oklahoma fans on the way out? Yeah.
So I'll start by saying this. Was this like the most comprehensive offensive game that we've seen from Texas under Sarkisian? No, but I think it was the right game plan because they didn't put too much on Arch's plate. And you mentioned the run game. They ran it for 4 yards a carry. That was huge. Arch got to use his legs in some moments. I thought that was big. But then I look at the Oklahoma side, and I feel like there are going to be people who start to do how healthy was Mateer? He threw 3 picks. And me, as a guy who has watched him and watched that Oklahoma offense, I would say, number one, he's interception prone. He likes to throw the ball to places that he shouldn't. But number two, Oklahoma couldn't run the ball. They ran it for 1.6 a carry. That has nothing to do with his thumb. He was sacked 5 times. I can't say that's all on his thumb. Texas was 10 of 17 on third downs. That has nothing to do with the quarterback's thumb. These are all reasons why I was very trepidatious when people started trying to say that Oklahoma was a top 5 team or they might be the best team in the country. I think they're good. They're also very flawed, and I think their flaws were exposed today.
Right, and part of the concern is they just put so much on him specifically. So if he has a day like this where he throws 3 picks, it really hurts him.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, just very impressive by Texas in the second half. And I think, again, coming off a week where there was a lot of Arch Manning criticism.
Yeah. There was a lot of general Texas criticism.
There was. He's going to sleep well. Alabama goes and beats Missouri. This was a big one because it was really the first marquee opportunity for Mizzou. Close game, back and forth. Probably the play of the game was that Ty Simpson 4th down throw. Ultimately, Alabama is just still Alabama. I mean, I think they've been a very good team. They have their warts like everybody else in the SEC.
Yeah.
But you're still going to have to go through them. Now they're putting together a nice little collection of wins in SEC play.
No doubt. I mean, you look at week 1 now, it seems like it's so far in the rear view. And
especially after another Florida State loss.
I mean, these guys got to get right. But, they're playing much better football, which is important. I'll say this for Missouri is what people thought of their defense, I still think is real. The pressure rate, their ability to generate negative plays like Ty Simpson, I thought, struggled more in the pocket today than he had in almost any other game outside of maybe that week 1 against Florida State. That brings up the concern for me about Alabama, which has been the concern for the last few weeks.
Offensive line.
Yeah, I mean, it's really both sides, but Ty Simpson, really good player, right? Like, can spin it. They've got great wide receivers. They still didn't run the ball very well, 2.8 yards per carry. And on the flip side of that, Mizzou was kind of moving the line of scrimmage. They had some runs, especially in the first half of that game. They have to be better in the trenches if they're really going to be a contender. But it's also one of those where the quarterback keeps playing like that, then they're going to be right there in the mix.
Yeah, and again, he's one of these guys, too, where maybe there's a bad pick, but makes up for it.
Yeah.
Makes up for it later in the game.
And he doesn't throw a lot of them.
No, he doesn't.
Like, that's the thing. It might be a bad one, but, like, you're not counting on that to happen all the time.
Let's talk about a team that 3 weeks ago we thought was maybe the worst team in the Power 4. All of a sudden now has a second win, 2 wins in a row. UCLA crushed Michigan State 38-13. Nico Imaliava has 8 touchdowns, 0 interceptions in the last 2 games. They have scored way more points in the last 2 games with their new offensive coordinator, Jerry Neuheisel, than they did in their first 4 games in total. I mean, I don't know where this goes, but, like, this is a totally different UCLA team, and I'm really happy for them. This is why you make a coaching change, I guess. You spark something.
I'm going to tell you where it goes. Nico playing really good ball. Like, you'll look at the total passing numbers, and you'll be like, it's not that great. 3 touchdowns through the air. He's very accurate, like, high completion percentage. But this is another team. They figured it out in the trenches.
Yeah.
Like, they are running the football aggressively. They are stopping people's run games. Like, we've seen it 2 weeks in a row. And that's the thing for me. It's just like all of a sudden they're like, we're not going to get pushed around, and we can be the dominant team on the field, and I love that.
And they're playing
them.
with urgency. There's trick plays, all sorts of stuff with special teams.
Special teams is huge.
They have been playing like a team that had talent on it.
Yes.
Like we kind of thought that they would be.
What does it mean for Michigan State real quick?
Bad day for Jonathan Smith. He's trying to show growth in year 2, and you're not seeing that with a loss like this.
Tough deal.
Really tough. It is time to talk about James Franklin. Okay, so coming into the year, the narrative around James Franklin is, okay, Penn State beats all the teams they're supposed to. They just need to start being able to beat the teams that are the elite teams in college football, the Ohio States, the Oregons. Now you have 3 in a row, 3 losses in a row. One, that excruciating double overtime loss to Oregon at home in the whiteout. That spills over into a trip to the Rose Bowl and a loss to UCLA, the story of the season so far. And then this Northwestern game, I believe it was home game against a Northwestern team that was maybe just going to have one Big Ten win this season. Oh my gosh. And everything that could go wrong goes wrong. The team doesn't look like they want to play football, that they want to play together. They're trailing multiple times in this game. And then Drew Aller gets injured and is carted off the field. And James Franklin says in the postgame that Drew Aller is done for the year. He has played more than 4 games in each of the last 4 seasons. So unless NCAA eligibility rules change or he, applies for a waiver and petitions, he's done. His college career is over. And it just feels like there is no way forward for James Franklin and Penn State, right?
Yes, I tend to agree with that. It's like I'm sitting there as we're watching the game unfold, and then it goes final, and I'm trying to imagine what that future looks like. And part of the difficulty of imagining that is Penn State is probably at a point where they're like, we can't continue down this road. And I think James Franklin is probably at a point where he's like, I need a change of scenery. I just need to be somewhere different, whether that's taking a year off to do media and, watching football or going somewhere else to coach immediately. It seems like both of them right now are just going in different directions. And so I don't know that this thing would make it any further than it is right now. Being outgained by Northwestern is a damning stat, right? Like, there are a lot of things that can go wrong in a lot of ways to lose a game. But offensively, defensively, that was a disinterested performance. Drew Aller, I feel very, very bad for him with this injury. This might be a blessing in disguise that he doesn't have to go out there and play for that offense anymore, because I've been saying it for a few weeks now. They've been killing him. Just that offense has not allowed him to develop, which is unfortunate. The run game is miserable. It's just not what we expected it to be.
Was supposed to be the best, maybe the best running backs in the country.
Sure, it's what we talked about in the preseason. Oh, by the way, $3 million on a coordinator on defense, and they're average guys. None of those guys are jumping off the film right now.
Yeah, this is mostly the same team as last year,
which is really crazy to
Tyler
think about.
Warren, big difference, but
I know, but they've regressed. Like everybody else has regressed.
Yeah. And so it's a problem. And you think about the money that would be owed James Franklin. We're talking over $50 million with this buyout. I think what I wrote and what we talked about last Saturday night was James Franklin exit strategy. He looked for another job. He goes, hey, I don't want to live here and deal with this angst and this relationship with this fan base.
I want to go to Virginia Tech.
Or somewhere, right?
No,
anywhere.
Yeah.
And so either he chooses to leave and the buyout is manageable because he would still owe the school a couple $1 million. The new school could pay it, whatever it is. But now it does feel like there is a sense of urgency on the school side. And maybe you try to negotiate a buyout down because 50 plus is a big number even for the situation. But it is really hard to imagine James Franklin on the sidelines for Penn State next season or even next week. It's going to be excruciating. Imagine if he sends out, you said this to me, when he's going to send out his little tweet on Sunday about Iowa.
That's the thing I keep thinking about. Like, that to me is where it's really hard to see a way forward. He's going to put it out. It's what he does. And people are going to clown him. He's going to get ratioed like he did a week ago. And also, if I'm sitting in their athletic department building, I'm like, don't do that, right? Like, it just everything feels like it's not working at all. And I feel bad for the players on that roster, too, because a lot of them came back to chase a championship that's completely out of the cards. And it also feels like the season's lost and you basically punted, even though you haven't fired a coach, whatever the case is, but nobody's in it anymore.
Yeah, it almost feels like if there's like a coordinator change or a position change, it's like it doesn't even address the root cause.
No, but I do think that there is one coordinator that needs to be changed there.
We'll see. We'll see
Yeah.
how quickly some of this happens, but it does feel like it's just untenable moving forward.
Yeah.
Let's switch gears and hit a couple other games. Interesting results. Notre Dame pulled away from NC State late. We said this during halftime. It felt like NC State defensively was able to slow down a Notre Dame run game for at least part of that game in ways that we hadn't really seen. Ultimately, like those teams are in different places, programs in different places. Notre Dame can't lose, and they're pulled away. Anything concerning or anything you take from that result?
No, I mean, that's the run game specifically is the one thing that, like, if they had a bad week, I'd probably be willing to look the other way.
Yeah.
Because those guys have been very consistent going back a couple years now. Like, I expect them to be able to get right back on track.
See, they had the fourth downs, I think, are concerning.
That's a concern.
Play calling and also lack of execution on them.
Yes, for sure. And then the other thing that Chris Sims and I talked about earlier was this defense, when they want to blitz and they want to play man-to-man behind it, they're still not hitting the quarterback, and it's allowing for some of the explosive plays that we're seeing.
There's a team that could be a problem next week in USC.
The Trojans?
That's a very explosive
I'm not
offense.
playing man-to-man on those guys.
Whew, I
I'm
mean,
telling
we
you right
saw
now.
what like the Texas A&M receivers were able to do.
Well, I mean, I'm looking at the game that's going on tonight too. Lincoln Riley is a smart enough play caller that if you're going to heat him up, he's just going to throw screens. He's going to throw it quick. He doesn't care.
Yeah, that's going to be a real test, I think, for the Notre Dame
Oh, no
defense,
doubt.
and if they've actually improved since early in the season. One other interesting result, the Big 12. We talk
Yes.
about it a lot. Outside of Texas Tech, it's all over the place. Colorado beats Iowa State. They storm the field. Our pals. That was the Louis Riddick, Baba Shusin, Chris Budden. They've had so many upsets this season, so I really had that one circled because I knew they were going to be calling
We
that
should
game.
just find whatever game they have, and that should be our underdog.
Our
yes.
upset picks. I know. We
100%.
should do that week to week. So what does that tell you about the state of the Big 12?
So the Big 12 is an interesting conference from the standpoint of, I think the team that ends up playing and losing the Big 12 championship game is probably going to be a 3-loss team.
Ooh.
And that opens up this idea of where are the bids coming from for the at-large teams in the college football playoff. I think the ACC could actually set up in a similar way to where you could have a 3-loss team once that championship game is done. And it opens up the door to say, is there a 4-loss team nationally that we can compare resumes with? If they have, the 4-loss team has a couple marquee wins, and whoever lost in the Big 12 doesn't have a marquee win, and they've also got 3 losses. Does it open up because it feels like there are a lot of losses to be had out here this year in college football.
I agree with that last point. And I do think that we need to not use the cut lines we learned in year one, which were right, like 10-2 was most of those teams got in.
Yep.
9-3 no at-large teams got in. Like feels like a 9-3 team, certainly
get
would be in the
at-large,
mix. Yeah,
for
it's
sure.
there's just a lot of losses with a lot of teams. The SEC by not having like a clear 1-2 or 1-2-3, they're just going to beat up on each other a lot. So I'm with you on that, but I do think it's going to be really interesting, especially if you're comparing like an SEC 3 or 4 loss team to a 2-loss team in one of those leagues, and we talk about kind of that separation between the Big 2 and the rest. Also, the Big 10, Penn State's out of the picture. You have 2, like, for sure, college football playoff top contenders. Who comes out of the middle in the Big 10 will also determine some of those spots as well.
I think there's this interesting thing, like the double-digit win is such an interesting plateau to where if you had a regular season 3-loss team, I think people would be willing to entertain the team that had 4 losses potentially if there were good marquee wins.
I'm glad you're just setting the stage for this.
Well, I think it's a real thing that can happen.
I think we'll see. But I think it's good to like open the brain to that. We have to do helmet stickers. Time for helmet stickers. Joshua Perry, you go first.
I'm going to go with Sark. And I feel like we talked about it earlier. Quarterback got beat up. They were talking about how you couldn't call plays. Your offensive line was trash and your defense wasn't what we thought it was going to be. And then you go into a rivalry game, which we all love, against a team that people were like, this might be one of the best teams in the country, and you dominate. And so I'm giving Sark a helmet sticker today.
I'm going with the coach as well, Curt Cignetti. We have sung his praises many times on this podcast.
Deservedly so.
Deservedly so. he is ruining what it's like for everyone else who's hired a first or second year coach and just the expectations that you
He's
could
ruining
have.
what it's like to be at a place that doesn't know a lot about winning, too.
Also true.
Yeah.
I mean, he's the poster child for an era where you can change your fortunes really quickly. If you hire the right guy, he's a great talent evaluator, culture, all of the things. That's not the most talented team.
Not at all.
But they're so good, and they're so tough, and they're so physical. They're not the biggest either.
Nope.
But they're going to win a lot of games. I think they might win out. I think they're going to be undefeated at the end of the regular season.
It'd be a hell of a deal. I hope so for their sake,
I think
too.
it's going to happen. Time to talk our in-progress games. Reminder to everyone listening, we are recording this during the second half of the primetime games. Some of these are a little dicey. Some of them are really interesting. A&M hosting Florida. Florida seemed to figure out some things offensively, and that's carried over into this game. A&M up by a touchdown at the end of the third quarter. We've been curious about Texas A&M, right? Like, we're curious about the Aggies. Could they be maybe that actual best team in the SEC?
Yes, and it's like this is a hard one to evaluate because I think people are always going to look at Florida's record and be like, they're not that good. But from a talent standpoint, they can compete with all the top teams in the SEC. Florida's offense played generally pretty well. I think a lot of teams are going to have a difficult time containing Marcel Reed and some of the weapons, not only in the pass game, but in the run game for A&M. So I actually think this one always had a chance to be a very interesting game. But my biggest takeaway here is A&M is as talented as anybody in America if you can go play with Florida and match them talent for talent.
And Florida has had a good defense throughout this.
No doubt.
And I think you said this earlier that Billy Napier, when his job is on the line, is like the best coach in America.
Really
Like
good coach.
they play really well, and everything is very hot seedy for that Florida team. Another SEC game that is also tight right now, but as we have it right now, Auburn leads Georgia 10-3. This one has had some officiating issues and a ton of replays and a bunch of angst related to that, and we can get into that a little more in the midweek episode if it ends up playing into what ultimately happened. But basically, Georgia was doing nothing offensively in the first half until the final possession. They got 88 yards in their final drive. Before that, 4 possessions, 78 total yards of offense.
I think it's fair to say, even without this game being finished, but like this ain't the same old Georgia, right? Like this isn't the Georgia team that we have looked at in the past.
It's a deeply flawed Auburn team.
I know. And that's where, if I'm a Georgia fan, I would probably start having a little bit of anxiety. Their offense isn't very dynamic at all. And their defense is susceptible to giving up big plays in the secondary, but we're also seeing now that the quarterback run can hurt them with Jackson Arnold. Like, there are major flaws, albeit a very talented team, and we know the coaching staff is good, but major flaws with Georgia.
And other teams were able to pressure Jackson Arnold
Yes.
and make life a lot more
Yeah, they
difficult.
don't. Georgia does not get pressure. Just as a
That's
rule.
what's weird. It's
It
weird
is.
to see a Georgia defense that is not dominant like it was with those back-to-back title teams. Want to get some thoughts on USC, Michigan. This is our game. We've been talking about it all day. As we're recording this, it's near the end of the third quarter. USC leads 21-7. It was 14-7 at the half. There was a kind of a head scratcher of a turnover from Jaden Mayava that just happened. Michigan probably needs stuff like that to come back into this game because everything looks a little bit easier, I think, for USC, at least offensively.
Yeah, I mean, I think USC offensively has been impressive to me because Lincoln Riley has called the game that's been available to them for the most part. When I was watching tape on Michigan during the week, one of the things that I recognized is their defensive line likes to get vertical and their linebackers like to run through gaps. So susceptible to misdirection, play action in the screen game. And they've done a lot of that, even though Mayava's a guy who can really push it down the football field. There was always going to be a question of Michigan's offense going on the road, young quarterback, wide receiver room that's still trying to develop. I think we're seeing that question kind of play out in some ways here. So the finish of this one, I'm sure, will be pretty interesting because Michigan likes to make these things interesting. But
yes, and USC had that crazy game against Illinois. They had all of those close games last year
they
that
had
they were
the
on the
one
wrong
last
side.
year where Michigan came
They were
back on
right.
them.
They were leading. So I think that ultimately, and everyone who's listening to this will probably know the result. But you know, I think this is going to be a big test for USC. We talked a lot about this in the pregame, trying to establish themselves as a more physical, tougher team than they've been. It would be their first big marquee, like Big Ten result. but also just trying to take that step under Lincoln Riley to show like, hey, we're not just like this flashy offense and can't play defense, can't out-tough somebody.
No, I mean, this is, I said it in the pregame, but it feels like the litmus test, a measuring stick for USC because of the makeup of Michigan, right? We don't know if Michigan's going to be a college football playoff team when it's all said and done, but we know how they like to win football games, and we know that's a direct challenge to the way that USC typically goes about business.
And it's the way they would like to be known
Yes.
as well, and that's part of this. I think it's going to be fascinating to see the path forward for the winner of this game as well. Well, thanks for listening to Rushing the Field, presented by Xfinity.